lecture with your instructor, me, Professor Mimi Rasky. Let's continue on our trek through matrices and modeling matrices with two-dimensional arrays in Java code. Today, we're going to look at summing up two matrices. When you add two matrices together, the result is also a matrix. There's a little bit of stuff more that's involved here, so let's take a look. When you take the sum or difference of two matrices, they have to be of the same size. They have to have exactly the same rows and columns. Otherwise, it's impossible. So when you add two matrices together, you're going to get a result that is a matrix of the identical size whose entries are the sum or difference, depending on if you're adding or subtracting, of the corresponding entries from the original two matrices. So let's take a look at these two matrices we have right here on your lecture notes. We have this first 2 by 2 matrix A and another 2 by 2 matrix B, and we want to take their sum right now. So if we add these two together, what are we going to get? Well, we'll add the row 0, column 0 elements together, so that would be 3 plus negative 4 to give us a new row 0, column 0 element. Then we'll add the row 0, column 1 elements together, so we'll have negative 2 plus 1. Then we'll go down to the next row. We call that row 1, believe it or not, because we start counting at 0. And we're going to take the sum of negative 9 and 0. Oops, my plus sign's a little messed up. And then finally, we will add the last element in that row 1, 1 plus negative 5. So when we do the arithmetic, our resulting matrix, 3 plus negative 4 is negative 1. Negative 2 plus 1, oh, it's also a negative 1. Negative 9 plus 0, negative 9. And 1 plus negative 5 is negative 4. So this is our resulting matrix. So we're going to write a method now called matrix sum that it's going to accept two two-dimensional arrays and return another two-dimensional array that will be the sum. So how will we do this? Let's start with the header, public, static, and we're going to return a two-dimensional array. And we're going to do integers, although technically they really should be of double type. So we're going to have our pair of brackets here to denote a two-dimensional array is going to be returned, and then the method name goes next. They wanted us to name this method matrix sum. And then here in the parameter list, we're going to have two-dimensional arrays. So it's kind of up to you what you'd like to name these local variables. So if I do int, say, a pair of brackets here, and then I'll call it A, and then int, another pair of brackets here, we'll call it B. So there's our two parameters, and now we're going to start the body of the method with our curly brace, of course. So let's, once again, and I forgot in my last example, I noticed this after I had already recorded it, we're going to have two integers, m and n, to take the number of rows and the number of columns. So let's do this right now. So m equals a dot length, and n, the number of columns, will be a bracket bracket 0 dot length. And let's remember to use our m and n this time. So we're also going to declare a brand new array. Excuse me, I was just starting to write double, but then I said we're going to go with just keeping it ints. So we'll do int and then a pair of brackets here. And how about if we'll name this brand new matrix C, and it's a new one, and it's going to also be int. And so what are the number of rows and number of columns? So, well, m and n. It's going to be the same dimensions as the parameters. So then we're going to start our nested for loops. You got it. So if you want to use your index named row, I'm going to use I for the row control variable and J for the column control variable. It's very standard. Int I equals 0, I less than m, semicolons here, I plus plus. Begin the next for loop. I'm going to not have a curly brace because I claim this next structure is basically a one-liner, but if you want, you can put your curly brace for the body. So the inner loop is going to go over the columns j equals 0, semicolon j less than n, semicolon j plus plus. And now we're going to add A and B elements, the same, matching elements, and put them into our brand new array called C. So how will we do that? So we're going to go C, bracket, bracket, I, bracket, bracket, J is equal to A, bracket, bracket, I and J, plus B, bracket, brackets, I and J. And that will, on an element-by-element basis, add A and B together and put it into C. And then when all of this is complete, we'll have a nice populated resulting array, and we can return it. So it will return that brand new matrix C. So that's it. Let's take a look at NetBeans and see if this is going to work. So I've already gotten the code ready to go here in NetBeans. You'll notice I named it public class matrix sum, and here's the main. I already explicitly initialized two matrices, one called A matrix and B matrix. This just matches the ones, the same elements in your lecture notes. And then I have a brand new matrix here that I'm just putting a reference for it first with the int bracket, pair of brackets, and I'm calling it rsum. And then rsum equals, and then here's the method call to actually populate that array. Matrix sum is the name of our method, and we're going to give it the two arguments, the A matrix and B matrix, and that will put into the rsum a brand new matrix. And then I'm going to print all the contents out of our beautiful resultant matrix. So my println statement, here's the resultant sum of the two matrices, and then I have nested for loop here to print out my brand new array. So if we look at the method that we hand wrote, but this is what it looks like typed up, public static int, pair of double brackets here, matrix sum, int bracket bracket AA, and int bracket 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 BB, and then we have that brand new one that we're declaring inside the array. And so we're saying int pair of brackets C equals new int, and there's, I didn't use M and N here, although I probably should have. But we're just, I also, knowing that they have to be the same size, I should put, this shouldn't be the same right here. This should be a bracket 0 dot length, because the number of columns might not be the same as the number of rows. Okay, so then I have the nested for loops that we also had, and then here inside the inner for loop we have that we're filling up the row and columns of A and B and put it into row C. And I'm using row column instead of IJ like I did in the handwritten, but I hope that you can follow along, and forgive me for that. So if we run it, what's going to happen? Well, I'll come over here and do run file. Ignore that error message. Oh boy, we've got an error. Cannot find symbol, variable A. Oh, I know why. Up here I accidentally forgot to do two A's. My parameters I called AA and BB. So Java gets grouchy when you mistype names, even to the best of us. Okay, so here's the resultant sum of the two matrices, and it's exactly what we got. So that is a nice result. And you can change up the size and dimensions of your matrices and run your matrix sum method and make sure it runs okay for different size matrices, just so long that the two that you submit to that method are exactly the same dimensions. Happy programming, and go on to the next matrix example video to see how to do the trace of a two-dimensional array or matrix. Happy programming.